I'm here speaking to Azza Karam, UN Special Advisor on Culture and Coordinator of the UN Task Force on Religion and Development. What are you here for specifically?
Quintessentially, to look at to coordinate a special session as part of the summit on religious engagement, which is intending to focus on why is it that religion, especially faith-based organizations, have a particular role to play in humanitarian work. And based on the work that we've been doing in the UN over many years, there is an understanding that it isn't just an NGO, when it's faith-based or faith-inspired. Of course, many of them are non-governmental organizations, but they bring something else through the work and in their work. And it's not all bad, and it's not all good. So the point is, what is it that's so unique about faith-based organizations that do humanitarian work? And it's interesting because in the beginning the assumption was, but they're just an NGO, aren't they? I mean, these are just humanitarian NGOs, for heaven's sake. The point was, no, well, okay, then there's a few of them, right? And we realized that there's actually most of them, many which are delivering are actually faith-based. And so it's interesting to see how is it that these organizations, which are such critical service deliverers in emergency situations, just happen to be faith-based, or is it not just happen? And if it isn't, and this faith identity is important to them, how does it manifest? What does it mean? So those are some of the things that we're looking at in this special session.
Do you think there will be greater commitment after the summit to including faith-based actors in humanitarian response?
Without a doubt. I think the process of coming to the summit and being part of the summit itself has been very instructive for the faith-based partners, but also for the UN, particularly for UN OCHA, which opened the doors and said, let's look at this particular niche and issues and areas. But I honestly think that it's not a question anymore of whether to engage, but how to engage with faith-based partners who are the backbone of humanitarian life, because they're, as faith-based organizations, they're there before the disaster strikes, they're there when the disaster strikes, they're there long after the disaster strikes, whereas some of us who are humanitarian actors at the international level tend to come in to support and assist and eventually get out. But these are some of the oldest, most long-standing entities. So I think now that awareness of, oh heavens, they're there, aren't they? They do a lot of work, don't they? That awareness is now pretty pervasive, and the question is, good, what does that imply in terms of how we should be engaging, not as ad hoc as we are now, and not as, they happen to be faith-based, but more as, oh, they are faith-based. What does that mean? What does that imply? What does it allow, enable, and what could it potentially compromise or threaten, or what do we need to be much more learned about, and how can we better the partnership, which we're doing anyway? How can we do these partnerships better? And how can we work together to support each other in a much more collaborative framework, but in a way that is learned and systematic and conscious of this idea of religion and religious engagement.
Excellent. When your special session is over this afternoon, what do you think you'll do for the rest of the summit?
No, I think it'll be a lot. It'll be interesting to then have the one-on-ones with many of the. There's about 200 faith-based actors who have been coming here. We had also a side event earlier this morning. I think the opportunity, honestly, of such meetings is the process of getting to them and organizing and meeting people, and then having the conversations, and then critically, it's what these conversations lead to in terms of the networking and the opportunities that are identified in the shared interests. So I think that's what happens after the session, so to speak. It's where do we go from here? Who are you? What do you do? How can we work better with each other? Should we work with each other at all after what you said this afternoon? No, I don't know. I'm joking, of course.
So do you think that they benefit? Do you think that something will change structurally after the summit, or do you think it's just about those informal partnerships and networking, or is there a way of integrating both?
I think something has already changed structurally. To have this summit, there have been many processes put in motion. One of them is this quintessential understanding that the summit began with, which is there are different stakeholders, and these different stakeholders are each unique, but they each need to be brought together in order to change how we do humanitarian assistance and humanitarian relief and humanitarian work. And I think what you're seeing is that awareness is now happening, and the point here is how do we reconfigure the way that we interact, the way that we exist in countries, interact, plan, and make sure that we can make a difference together. So I think that structural change is already happening, to be honest.
That's fantastic news. Thanks so much for stopping by. Thank you for sharing your perspectives and your passion. Good luck with the rest of the summit and with this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.